correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience.
Welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm here with my friend Steve.
Hello.
We have a very special guest on this week. However, before we get to that, I do want to shout out our podcast for the week, and that podcast is Werewolf the Podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Werewolf the Podcast, Steve?
Well, Werewolf the Podcast, as you might guess, is a podcast all about Werewolf the role-playing game. Primarily, it's kind of a retrospective podcast for Werewolf the Apocalypse from White Wolf and the various iterations it's been through since then. But it's hosted by Josh Heath, who joined us to talk about, well, Werewolf the Apocalypse, about 2 months ago now. And it's a really cool show, very, very in-depth about Werewolf. And so if you want to check that out, I forget the exact address, but if you search Werewolf the Podcast, you should be able to bring it up. And I'll put a link in the show notes like we always do. So yeah, check them out. Good show.
Yeah, one of the really cool shows on the network. Speaking of really cool stuff, we have a very cool guest on this week. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest, bud?
Yes, our guest this week is Gavriel Quiroga, who is an independent RPG designer who's done, well, I believe it's 3 games now, or his 3rd game is currently on Kickstarter. We've actually mentioned his work in Game of the Week with Neurocity. He's also done Warpland, and his current RPG, which is on Kickstarter right now through, I believe, January 22nd, is a game called Hell Knight. So with that, welcome to Me and Steve, Gavriel.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Thank you, guys. Sorry, I had a communication problem.
That's okay.
I can fix.
Hey, it happens. It's what happens when you're talking halfway around the world.
Argentina right now, and well, maybe some stuff get lost on the way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. We're both big fans of your games that you have published so far, and very excited for Hell Knight.
Hey folks, just a quick note from editor Steve here. As you may have noticed, we had some connection issues during this interview, and it just felt to me, if I edited it the way I normally would, that there'd be a good chance that some stuff would actually be harder to understand than without the snippets that we did get. So I've chosen to leave it a bit more raw than I normally would, in the hopes that it conveys everything a little better, again, because of connection issues and so forth. So I hope y'all enjoy listening to this interview as much as Steve and I enjoyed recording it.
Great. Honored to be invited, and yes, I'm also very excited about Hell Knight. I have been on this for the last 8 months, so this is a big moment for me.
Well, I gotta say, I stumbled across the link on Kickstarter. I think had glanced at, I think it was Cyborg from the folks that did Morkborg, and this was like in that box down at the bottom about, well, if you like this, maybe look at this. And I went, and like the first thing that got me was just the image, and like it's very kind of Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and then like I start reading it and I'm like, oh gosh, and then like Steve said, the playlist and everything, and it's just like, oh, this ticks so many boxes.
Yes, it's it was a hard work for me, and I'm glad you like the list, because I'm sure you must be experts on the music, on the heavy metal stuff. And yes, for me has been of course a big inspiration. I'm very good friend with Peter, with Nord. He's including some of his art in the book.
Okay, I'm sorry, our connection cut out. Well, what was the person's name again?
The Morkborg illustrator.
Wow, was it
okay.
Johan?
Yes, Johan.
Illustrator. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I mispronounced it.
That's very cool.
A 2-page spread layout of a kick-ass dragon that we are including it in the Hell chapter of the book.
Very nice. I'm excited to see that. I'll be honest, when I started realizing that Hell Knight was from you and that you were the one that had worked and made Neurocity and both Neurocity and Warpland and then now Hell Knight, I was immediately excited because Neurocity, I think, is a fantastic game. I really do.
Thank you so much. Neurocity is not that well known. Warpland is more well known, I think. Most people play Warpland, but Neurocity was the game that started it all for me and started my career as a creator. So I have a very profound connection with that game. Do a big update of it at the end of the year.
Ooh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, Neurocity, for those who haven't seen it or read it, tell me if I'm wrong to say it's a heavily 1984 influenced take on Paranoia, but not intended to be a comedy game like Paranoia.
I think that appreciation is correct. It has also some influences from Alphaville, from Godard, and from THX, I think it's THX 1132 from George Lucas.
Okay.
Yeah, I was definitely picking up it has a really cool, almost I call it like retro futurism vibe, where it's future through the lens of the past.
I wanted to do my take on a cyberpunk dystopia, but make it very retro futuristic.
Yeah.
So the technology is analog. Well, you have read the book. There is he is inversing towards the analog age because of constant recycling of the components. Because, as you know, Neurocity is a closed environment, so the city itself is constantly recycling its own technology, and that is causing like involution.
Yeah, basically entropy.
Yes.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I mean it's a different sort of game, but it feels like Steve and I have talked about it, and in some ways, like he said, it kind of feels dirty and wrong, but in all the right ways.
Cult fun, cult the RPG, so you can feel the influence
Right.
of that.
Right, yeah. It definitely has that cult feeling. So I wanted to ask you, I picked up a little bit of a feel of like I have no mouth and I must scream. What were your big influences?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. I have no mouth, but I have to scream. I want to scream.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it captures, I think, the feeling of that existential angst against a supercomputer or living below, an all-powering God that controls everything you do.
Yeah, like I say, it just and then like Warpland as well. Like Steve's read that one more than I have, but my gut reaction to what I have read of Warpland is it's kind of like a acid trip Morkborg take on like a Conan like setting.
That's a good appreciation of it. I think that one of the biggest theme in Warpland, besides psychedelia, discussing the problems of obscurantism, of what happens when knowledge is restrained, and should knowledge be restrained? It's a criticism against that, but as you know, in Warpland, there is some religion that prohibits science and prohibits history, prohibits the understanding of technology in order to prevent mistakes humanity did that caused the destruction of the world. Warpland is immersed in chaos because of the technology of a previous civilization.
Well, that's pretty cool. And the other thing, there's a line in Neurocity, to go back to that I found and I loved it. And it's in the start of the rules chapter, and it says delaying a suspenseful narration to engage in mathematical calculations would be ruining a plot. And I love that you recognize that as a game designer.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's part of the OSR philosophy, right?
Yeah, I think so. And like, you're very like, this has a very OSR feel to it, but it doesn't feel like it's trying to replicate any old game specifically. It's just got that kind of minimalist look. We don't need a whole lot of rules. We're just going to have some stuff that we do with dice to make things random, but we don't have to have a rule for everything.
I think that one of the biggest challenge was making a workhorse system that is easy and simple and that can be learned in 10 or 15 minutes. I like that most of the cognitive effort from the part of the players and the game master is on the storytelling and not the rules.
Well, I think that's really cool. Now, the one thing I did want to ask, and I'm guessing, I believe it even said as much in the Kickstarter, you're using the same basic system for Hell Knight?
I'm using the same system. It is a bit even minimal version of the system, but instead of skills, I am using classes. The game has 5 different classes with a lot of customizations. Each class will have about 5 pages of the book. So the idea is that maybe 2 or 3 players can even choose the same class, but they will still feel very different. They will still feel very distinctive and unique. I think that we managed to do that. So yes, but basically I'm using the same 6 roll under the stat system.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask, and I'm not saying this that I think it's a fault of the game, but I did notice there is basically no character progression in terms of statistics or anything other than perhaps some loss due to injury.
Mhm.
Did you design the games with more of a kind of a short campaign idea behind them, that it's intended to tell like short stories or like anthologies? Or I mean, what was your goal there?
I think it works very good with one shots, but at least for Warpland, we made a campaign that lasted 25 sessions. I think it is a matter of concentrating on an plot or a storyline, and I think that the characters still evolve. I mean, they still get to be more powerful, they still get to have more contacts, more equipment, they still get to grow as a personality, as a character. But I did not want it to concentrate on levels or increasing stats.
Mhm.
That's at least not of my interest. I never cared about that.
Okay, yeah, I can really dig on that because a lot of games that it feels like they've shoehorned in a level system, and it especially you could just play a story where the whole point of it is not for you to get physically more powerful, but to develop a character to get into more of a find out who you are and what you are in this world. And I think I can really see where you're coming from with that.
That it works fine as it is. I mean, Warpland has some kind of character advancement. I think that after a couple of sessions, you can increase one of your stats, but that's the core of it. It's not a main interest for a designer.
All right. Well, it's narrative progression as opposed to mechanical, which is is fine.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually.
Always, I think that from a creative perspective, sometimes from limitations you can harvest a lot of great things. I'm also a musician, and I can understand that.
Mhm. So that actually leads kind of into a question that I wanted to ask, and that hopefully it comes across right. Do you consider yourself a game designer or an artist that works in games?
I'm a writer that works on games. I do not have much of a graphical studies, but I am a very visual person. So I usually, once I get a concept I like, I usually work a lot on the visual aspect of the game because I need visual aspects as cues for what the setting will be.
Okay.
Also, I think that at least the way I present the systems in my settings, send them as optional because I understand that most RPG brands usually have their own mechanics and systems they like. So it has happened a lot to me that players use their own system for my settings, and that's, I think, that pretty standard custom in the industry.
Okay. No, yeah. Yeah, you see yourself as a what do you want to say? The writing is first, not necessarily the mechanics of the game, which again, I think is great. And to be honest, your setting stuff is just awesome.
I think the system is at the service of the setting, but maybe you have another preference, so it's fine with me. I'm just interested in giving or showing different worlds or original worlds that discuss themes that are they are not that much discussed in RPGs. I think you have science fantasy. There are many great RPG science fantasy games. I still feel that Warpland gives something else to the public, and the same thing goes with Neurocity or Hell Knight.
I was going to say, so Neurocity is kind of a retro-futuristic cyberpunk. Warpland is psychedelic science fantasy, and then the game that like I mentioned before, you currently have on Kickstarter is called Hell Knight. So, what is Hell Knight a game about?
Doom Biker RPG. Players will interpret basically demonic bikers from hell that will be loosed on Earth, trying to capture fugitive archdemons, the verge of sedition, because Satan is missing. Nobody knows where he is. So all the hierarchies from hell are running away from. So everything is in a state of turmoil. The heavens or the angels have stated that if demons don't capture the fugitives this night, they will have a war against hell. So it's like playing in a ticking clock. You know those guys, or kill them and everything before hell breaks loose.
Well, I gotta tell you, like when I saw it, it was really cool, and even just reading it, I was thinking of an old Tales from the Crypt movie that I saw, years ago when I was in college, and honestly haven't seen it since. And then when I listened to the soundtrack, it only reinforced it because I have the soundtrack for that movie. I've had it on CD for years, and that's Demon Knight.
Demon Knight, yes, that's an amazing movie. Some of the backers from my Facebook group has been showing images from that movie last week.
Yeah, I remember that getting brought up actually because I'm part of that Facebook group.
Yes, it's a great movie. I think it captures a great part of the feeling of Hell Knight. Well, everything from the 80s, the horror movies from the 80s and the B movies that capture that feeling. And it is a feeling that has not been revived much except for the movie Mandy from Panos Cosmatos.
Okay.
In it, but it's a great movie starring Nicolas Cage.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
Please.
Mandy is fantastic.
Yeah, Steve's the real movie buff here.
Yeah, Panos makes some really fantastic horror movies. But yeah, Mandy is fantastic.
Yes, and it has all that all that 80s inspiration within.
Yeah, I agree completely. And that's what I think I really loved about Hell Knight was I was looking at it and I'm immediately thinking of like the best parts of like Hellraiser and all of the all of those awesome 80s horror movies that came out, and the music and everything just so evocative. I really, really think that's such a cool game, man. I'm so excited for that.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, yes. All the well, you have the directors. You have Cronenberg. You have John Carpenter. Well, there are so many great 80s directors that capture that feeling. In Mandy, you have specifically those type of demonic bikers, the Black Skulls. So those were the main inspiration behind the game. Those guys, those bad guys. I thought it would be very cool to play them in a setting that made some sense, because you're basically playing bad guys trying to protect the cosmic bad.
So the basic premise is you're bad guys trying to do good things to keep stuff from getting worse.
Yes, definitely.
Part of me wanted to make it maybe too simple to like this is like Ghost Rider meets Spawn, but only the parts that we wanted, not everything else we got.
Only the parts we like about it. Yes, for sure. A lot of from Neil Gaiman's. I think that Neil Gaiman's vision about hell also influenced a bit of the book. The book will have like an 80s chapter and also a chapter about hell, because the idea is to present like two play modes within the book. One play mode will be questing on 80s Earth, and the other play mode will be questing on Hell, in Hell. That is, as I said before, in Turmoil. So that play mode will be a bit more over the top. Hard mode versus the nightmare mode in the Doom game.
I got you. So, speaking of movies, and this sort of has the same feeling, another Nicolas Cage movie. Did you ever watch Drive Angry? Because it kind of the idea of escaping out of hell to stop worse things from happening. That has that same. It's a campy movie. Not
Not
great,
watch
but
I did not watch the movie, but one backer recommended, and I read what it was about. And one of the character classes will be called a revenant. That is
awesome.
also based on the Crow character. You know the Crow.
Right.
It has that. It is basically a mortal that is given another chance in his mortal life to serve in exchange for a service. So he like a badass dude doing hell's business on Earth.
Okay, kind of a little bit shades of the Crow there too. Then.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Crow, yes. He a demonic guy. He will be a mortal, but he still will have like a guardian, some demonic guardian that will keep vigilance over him. That could be a Crow, but it can be something like demonic. It could be like some of a slug creature that is attached to his neck, or maybe a hellhound, or maybe a strange ape that smokes a lot of cigarettes. So a lot of colorful characters.
Well, I don't even know what to say because like I saw the listing and it was just like, oh, this it just feels so like so much fun, for lack of a better way to say it. It's a chance to do well, and like you said, it's your bad guys, so you can be that kind of over the top. You don't have that. Well, we have to be the good guys. No, we're the bad guys, but it's an ends justify the means setting. So it's like there's less constraints, and maybe it's just because that 80s 90s era was when I was really growing up, and it just I don't know, it just like it ticks so many boxes for me.
Great, yes, it also ticks a lot of boxes for me also. I think that Morgborg that in some way or the other, because you basically be more or less bad guys in Morgborg, so I think that I understood that there was an interest from the part, or that it was very fun to play, as you said, doing without any moral restraint to do whatever you want. That's very comical. It's hilarious to see like a demonic guy trying to make his way in the mortal world, in the 80s world, because you can imagine that he's accustomed to a type of world, because he comes from hell, so he's almost medieval or savage in most of his ideas or ideology. In playtesting, going to be like a horror RPG, but it was so fun and so hilarious that we understood that black comedy is a great part of it.
Well, yeah, I think that black comedy side of horror and most grimdark games is something that a lot of people don't immediately recognize, and I think for a lot of players, that's a big attraction to that.
By side, well, you mentioned Tales from the Crypt. Tales from the Crypt is the perfect example of horror along the line with a black comedy.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to get into nitty gritty stuff, but how soon do you expect to have Hell Knight, so to speak, finished and done? I mean, obviously the campaign goes for about another 2 weeks here. How close is it to you being able to send it to press and so forth, or you still have a decent amount left to do, more art to get, so on and so forth?
Honestly, I had a similar issue with Warpland. My original intention was to do a 66-page book. Right, it's looking to be 88. It's growing because I am having a lot of contributions, both in art and in writing. Looking super cool, but I will probably be a bit delayed with delivering the book. I'm also adding a C-shaped brochure as a final stretch goal. I think that we will be able to make it. The book is going to be a hardcover. Honestly, it's going to be fantastic because I think that the only not like about Warpland was that it was a print on demand. I had to deliver drive through RPG because of practical aspect. But now I'm glad to say that we are going to do an offset print through Mixam. So it's going to look really premium. The colors are going to pop out. It's going to look the way I really want it to look. I'm also doing an offset print version hardback of Warpland that is included as an add-on for backers, for Hell Knight backers. So yeah, I think that it will probably take two months to be realistic.
Okay. Our connection's a little weird. You said probably about 2 months.
Yes. Probably a bit. Probably 2 months until backers get their book.
Oh wow,
that's not bad.
Yeah, probably 2 weeks when they ship the proof copy, and then it's going to be maybe another 2 weeks for production, and then Exalted Funeral will receive the book, and they will have it to ship it. Yeah, it's a long-term thing. It's to produce books, but I will the right track.
Well, that's really cool.
It's really not that long of a time, 2 months. I've seen a couple Kickstarters where it's, talking about a year till you get the book. A couple months isn't that big of a deal.
It's not that much of a deal, but for me, I have been working on it for almost the whole of the year. This is basically my only job. I've launched myself into adventure by becoming a full-time creator. It's a big thing for me, and I want to make sure to get it right. I don't want to be up at the last stage.
Right. Well, you've done well so far, so I can tell you that everything else you've published has been quality, and I'm very, very excited for Hell Knight, and definitely want to get my hands on it.
Yeah, I'm the one that is most stoked about it. The art that still has not been seen, an illustration by an artist called Subhuman, that thing that eventually make it into a poster because it's going to be amazing.
Okay. The other thing that I want to just point out to people, because a lot of people hear, Kickstarters, and they're thinking, it's going to be this. This is very, very affordable. I just finally put in the information to back it this morning, and it's to get the hardcover book and shipping for me in the US, I'm in for a grand total of $32, which is less than I'm going to pay for just a book, even if I drive to the store and buy it in most cases. So, I mean, I just, this is one of those where I can't find a reason not to back it.
Yes. I wanted to do, I think that, it's understandable that the market is flooded with very cool projects. So I understood that most of the community will be glad to see that the price of the book is not that expensive. I myself want to buy everything that comes out from Kickstarter, especially from Exalted Funeral, or there are so many cool things going on. So I made a point of not doing a very expensive book. So that's why I don't want to go over the 88 pages, but I think that it might go over the 88 pages.
Well, I'm just going to say, Neurocity is, I think, with all the character sheets and the pre-gens and everything in the back is about 120 some pages. And while it's not there's a lot of art and everything in the book, there's a lot packed into the text that's in there. And I say that meaning that you get some books that there's just pages and pages that's nothing but text. And that's not the type of book you have made in the past. But when you say you get a book with a lot of art and it's 88 pages or 120 pages, you think there can't be much in there. And in your previous work, that is not the case. There's a lot there, even if there aren't a lot of actual words.
Yes. I'm not. I think that I am a writer, but I am not much of a I don't write that much. I like to write very little, but what I write, I wanted to make an impact on the reader.
Well, I will say that at least from this reader's perspective, you very much succeed at that.
Thank you. It was a hard work. I'm so glad to hear this. Yes, it's always very nice to hear. I think that when you focus on writing, if the book is focused on writing, I think that it takes much longer for people to appreciate it. I think only this year Neurocity is starting to be appreciated because people reading it. But when you concentrate on the visual aspects, it makes an impact more quickly. So I think that the idea is to make a balance between both the visual and the writing. They have to go side by side, and that was the idea behind Warpland, and it will be also the idea behind Hell Knight, to make them into an art book, but that it will at the same time have a lot of serious content within its writing. So I don't want to say it again, but I think that Morgborg managed to do that.
No, I think you're exactly right, and I think maybe that Morkborg opened some people's eyes to what can be done.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that always happens with art movements. There's a couple of guys that open the path for the rest, and then a lot of grants or projects comes along the way, and they start different aspects of it and playing with their own stuff. Definitely.
So I have one other question, at least that's on my mind here, and having had the experience of learning a second language myself, although it's been 20 some years and I've forgotten most of it. Obviously, at least I'm assuming English is not your native language.
It is Spanish.
Do you actually write initially in Spanish and then translate it to English, or does it depend on what you're doing what day?
Actually, write in English. A much better English writer than speaker. The thing is that I get to practice a lot more by reading and writing than speaking it. I only speak on podcasts.
Well, no, that's like I said, I was just curious because I believe I heard an interview with you before where you said that like with Neurocity you had originally written it in Spanish and then you translated it yourself. And so I didn't know if that was your standard method or if you had shifted to writing initially in English.
I used to write a lot in English. I think that in another language that it's not your mother language, a slight advantage. The is that your mother will not be able to understand you. So it's like, you go around a lot of repression when you write in another language. It's like you're not that much affected by words, and I think that it works a lot for poetry. Somehow it makes sense to do that. Of course, it's an added difficulty for me, but luckily I have by my side a great wingman. He's Walton Wood, that is my editor and proofreader. He's also the proofreader behind Cyborg. So
Okay.
he's he's a very working guy, and he's always adding stuff and working closely with me.
Well, that's really cool. And look, I mean, I've got no complaints about anything I've seen from you. It's like it blows my mind that you're turning stuff out like this in a language that isn't your mother language, because I certainly wouldn't be capable of doing anything like that in English, much less some language that I have to learn.
Yes. Well, in my days, Neurocity did not have any proofreading at all, really. It was just a friend of mine that speaks his English, and he gave me a hand with that. So if you can understand Neurocity, that's more or less the way I write without any proofreading.
Well, like I said, my compliments, because it's a game that says a lot without using a lot of words to do it.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
What else do you have here, Steve?
I don't have much else. I'm very thoroughly happy with this interview. Is there anything you would like to Now, other than Hell Knight, or even if it is just Hell Knight, is there anything you'd like to?
That, well, of course, Hell Knight will be. I think that it will be, as I said before, it will not only concentrate on the visual aspects. It will actually have an interesting setting. Hell Knight, with Hell Knight, I wanted to avoid some of the burnout I had with Neurocity and Warpland. So that's why I wanted to do something that was entirely different and not related to my previous book. As you know, my two previous books, Neurocity and Warpland, were connected somehow. And I'm actually also working on a new project when I have the time. And that project will be connected with Neurocity and Warpland. It will be Meltdown. I think Kickstarter will be launched halfway in this year.
Mm-hmm.
A post-apocalyptic setting with superheroes.
Oh, wow, that sounds awesome.
Yes.
I think it was awesome. Yes, I want to. I wanted to have an original take on the superhero thing that I think that is a bit in. It's quite popular. Superheroes RPGs are very popular, but I wanted to focus on what would happen to people with superpowers on a post-apocalyptic setting. So far, what is happening is that these people are becoming like the new king or leaders of that destroyed humanity. They are a bit on the verge of losing control themselves, so they are becoming slowly the bad guys.
I'll be honest with you. I'm very, very excited to see your take on that, and that sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the moment, I think that the biggest challenge will be tweaking the system, because system for superpowers is so difficult. They become so abstract if they become so powerful. So I am still trying my best to think if I have to use the previous system or make something new. Not sure about it yet. But
Yeah. Well,
it's challenge.
we've talked about that before, that there are a lot of system hurdles for superheroes that just don't exist in a lot of other genres.
Yeah, it's very difficult, but because I think that it ends up being like Mage from from World of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes something like that. The power becomes so abstract that to make a system for it, you really need a system that can work in an abstract way. Otherwise, you would have like a big book that is only about powers, and that will be very demanding for a reader, because they have to understand all the different. And as I said before, I don't like so rule-heavy system. It becomes too crunchy.
Mm-hmm. So, could I ask a little bit? Here in the U.S., most people start with Dungeons and Dragons. What was your introduction? What are your RPG influences? Having grown up in Argentina.
Of course, I started with second edition Dungeons and Dragons. I think the 98, and then I moved slowly to World of Darkness. Eventually, I found Cult, which I love. I love Cult, and then I started developing my own settings. I think I have been playing on my own settings and version systems for the last 15 years.
Okay.
Yes, exclusively.
That's cool. So, if people are looking to find out more information about you and your games, do you have a website or anywhere you'd like them to go and find more information? I know you mentioned the Facebook group earlier. Anything else like that?
I think that joining our Facebook group will be interesting for them. The Facebook group is called Worlds of Quiroga, Neurocity, Warpland, and Hell Knight. And we can discuss anything that interests us, because there is such a broad amount involved. You have cyberpunk, you have science fantasy, and now you have 80s horror. So there's so many eclectic interests. So we can share basically anything that relates.
Very cool. Yeah, like I said, I'm a member of that group. I don't know if you're in there yet, Steve, or not, but
You'll be seeing my request here shortly.
Yeah, so we can have the 2 Steves, please. Yes.
You'll be seeing my request here shortly. So very cool, very cool. And with that, if there's nowhere else you'd like to plug yourself, it's time we move into Game of the Week.
woohoo! Game of the week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
All right, so I told you a little bit what we do with Game of the Week here. Is it's really just a chance to shout out a game that you want to make other people aware of for whatever the reason may be. And you mentioned that you have a game from a friend of yours that you want to bring people some awareness to, and then Steve and I will also have a game that we pick out for ourselves. So would you like one of us to go first, and then you can go, or how would you like to do this?
Sure, you guys first.
Do you want me to go first, Steve? Do you mind?
You can if you like.
All right. I have a game. So I've been on a kick of some old school Dungeons and Dragons recently. As a matter of fact, we're recording this on an off day. So tonight's Monday because I have my AD&D game happening tonight. But I have a game called They Cried Monster. And I don't know if I've shouted this out before. I don't think I have.
It's news to me.
Yeah, it is a system agnostic or old school revival game built around sort of that AD&D rule set. It is basically that you play monster hunters trying to catch, kill, and capture monsters. It's based on stories like Hellboy, The Witcher, Mushishi. It's really just seems like a really cool, dark monster hunting game. I don't know. It has very interesting cover art. The poor guy who's got like axes and pitchforks pointed at him while he's got his head inside of the jaws of a monster. It looks really awesome. It's $6 for the watermarked PDF. Yeah, I think this could be I have to get my hands on it and really check it out, but I think I might throw this on a table here because it seems really cool.
Yeah, it does. It looks pretty neat, and like you said, it's lightweight, designed to be kind of take what you want and put it where you like to use it.
Yeah. So that's my game of the week.
All right. Well, I have one, and this is maybe a little unusual for what I've been picking lately, but this is a little one-page RPG. It's called The Land of Og, and it's basically just a silly little one-page caveman RPG. It says players continue to use big words. Play Og in Land of Og. It's very much kind of a Captain Caveman, just silly little have fun, playing prehistoric. Well, okay, it's not one page. I had thought it was, but now it's saying 64. So still, but yeah, it's. I mean, the PDF is again $6, so you're not looking for much. It's just a fun little something to do, maybe on an off day or for a couple of weeks because you're just looking for something different.
This is from Ulysses Spiel, so
Yeah.
it should be pretty good.
Yeah. It does. It looks. Oh, it says actually. There's a little note here. It said also included inside is one new word.
Yeah, it looks neat. I think this would be a fun one to throw on at a party or something when
Yeah.
people are just sort of hanging out.
Well, the cover art kind of vaguely reminds me of, like, what was it, The Far Side?
It definitely has Far Side to it.
All right. Well, that's ours. How about you, sir?
Well, I have a new RPG that was developed by a Mexican friend. He's called Choc Fernandez. He also has a Spanish-speaking podcast, but the game is in English. The game is called Medulla Survival TTRPG set in a fragmented reality. I think that it's more or less like some kind of Matrix horror theme game. And also pay what you want on his website. You guys have the link.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
it uses D12s for the resolution. So I think that's something different.
Yeah. Not too many games are based exclusively in a D12.
And has a cool stress mechanic and a health table. It's nice. It's only 10 pages long.
Okay. Well, that's cool, though.
Yeah, very nice.
I'm going to say, your work proves that you don't have to have a big book to have a great game.
This one is very, very cool.
Yeah, and looking at the website, it looks like it clearly drew some visual inspiration from Morkborg as well.
I think it's very Morkborish.
Mhm. I can see that. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. It was really awesome, really good conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for the invitation. I hope my broken English was more or less understood. I did my best.
Clearly understood. You're good. You're good.
Yeah, you're very good. Trust me, your English is a heck of a lot better than our Spanish.
No, thank you. Really appreciate your work and that you help us indie developers to make a shout out about our work.
Like I said, thank you for taking the time to come join us. And to be honest, I mean, the only thing I wish, our connections could have worked a little better, but such is the way things work sometimes with the internet. So
The solar flares.
Yeah. With all of that being said, as always, links to all games mentioned are in the show notes. We'll have links to where you can find Gavriel and everything, and definitely to Hell Knight. We do want to thank everyone for listening. We want to remind you to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Yep. Take care, y'all. Go back, Hell Knight.
Yes.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.
Okay. So that's working.
I think it's my start, isn't it?
It is. Do you have any other questions for us before we get started?
I don't think so, Steve. I'm
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
And let me make sure I have your name. It's Gavriel Quiroga?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
That's the best pronunciation I heard so far.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Hopefully, we will get to do this again sometime in the future.
Yeah, well, if your superhero thing comes out, you clearly know where to find us. Let us know, because that sounds really fun, and I'm really curious to see your take on that, because there's something.
It will be done, yes, but it will come out for sure.